so. But all of it is, it comes back to your living room. If I want to know something from somebody on direct, I don't, isn't it true so-and-so? Well, what are you going to get? Yes, yes. Lawyer comes back to you and tells you, well, I was really good. You wouldn't believe it. I got it. All I got is, I got it down. Yes, no, yes, no, yes, no. Really? Great. Well, now the jury has an idea what you think, but do you think they know what the witness thinks? And so you've got to let witnesses talk and control the conversation, but in a way, if you were in your house, what doesn't make sense about what this witness is telling you? If somebody came in your living room, what is it that they're saying that doesn't make sense? If I'm listening to this, what is it that might not bother me or so? So at the end of the day, what I'm trying to get y'all to come back to is use your everyday life experiences as to how you put on a case, how you respond to the other side's case, and use your instincts as a natural thing. It's easy for people like me to say, be yourself, but it's really true. When I changed juries, it worked much better for me. Why? Because it was something I was more comfortable with than the way that everybody else said do it. You're going to find ways to do things that you really feel more comfortable with. You got to trust your instincts. Now, it's hard if you got somebody that's facing 20 years to life in prison or so. I understand that. Everybody does. You've got the harder job. There's no question. It's much harder doing what y'all do than being a prosecutor. Prosecutors who've never been defense attorneys may not agree with that, but they're wrong. Yours is the hardest job. But it is incredibly, incredibly important and significant. And there is possible that in your local community right now, your standing, your job, and what your obligations are may be on an upward path of public perception. And if that's the case, you need to be ready to take advantage of it. And you need to be ready to make them be comfortable following the instincts of being fair to you and the person you represent. I think what you do has tremendous potential for what I call freeway moments. Freeway moments are, you have to live either outside the loop or drive the freeway to get inside the loop. They're when you're driving along about 6:37, 8 o'clock at night, and something really happened good in a trial. You may have won a motion. You may have talked a prosecutor into a really good plea. You may have gotten a not guilty. You may have gotten a hung jury against all odds. But you know that you made a difference in another human being's life. There are no better freeway moments than that. And y'all's job enables you to do that. You need to embrace it, enjoy it, and in all the down times when you're the visiting team, you got to enjoy the hell out of those times when the visiting team wins. Okay? Now, I'll be glad to answer any questions that y'all have. I didn't realize I'd taken as much time of y'all's as I had. Yes, ma'am.
Turn around and tell them. You made mention. Is this on?
Okay. I think it's on for him.
You made mention that we shouldn't tell the jury what the law is and then turn around and tell them, ask them what they think about it, right? So a lot of times by the time you get to the defense, they've already been told what the law is, right?
That's true.
The judge, a lot of judges, in order to stop the jury from busting, they try to indoctrinate them ahead of time with the law. You know, this is the law, the defendant doesn't have to testify, just by way of example. So do you have any suggestions about how to kind of overcome?
Yeah, I think you strike what I said in terms of not asking them, telling them what the law is until. You're right about that. That's more applicable to the prosecutor who starts out. I think on the defense side, you start out with those things after you've gone through the sort of obligatory stuff to make them feel more comfortable with you as a person and what you're doing. I think you then move into how do you feel about it? You know, the judge told you the defendant doesn't have to testify, but let's don't stop there. How do you feel about that? What do you think about it? And start soliciting their opinions. What you don't do ahead of time is tell them why that's so important and why they have to follow it and all of that. You don't want to do that until you have found out how they feel. So when the judge is telling you, well, no, the prosecutor said so-and-so, how many of you said, yeah, right? Right? I mean, how many of you, remember, he wants to make, I'll take him at his word, he wants a fair jury. But he wants a fair jury that votes his way. That's his perception of fair, right? We want a fair jury that gives him every right he has and finds him not guilty if this guy fails to prove his case. So the question becomes is, how do you feel about making that decision without the defendant testifying? Some of you have said you want to hear both sides. I want to know how many of you feel that way. And just go out there. Just find out who, surface them first. Find out what their views are of what the judge has said. Don't let it sit with one answer. And then once you do, all right, now, here's the deal. I don't want to change any of your minds. In fact, I truly want I want 12 jurors who are comfortable that they can follow the law once they take the box. But I don't want to put you in a spot where you go sit in a jury box and all of a sudden the defendant doesn't testify. And then you get back there and go, say, look, he didn't testify. He's got to be guilty. That's some evidence of it, in spite of what the judge just said. So what I want to explore with you is how you feel about that. What's your reaction? How many of you were surprised to hear he didn't? We have enough TV now, you're probably not surprised. But I want to know what your reaction is. What do you think? Ms. Jones, what about you? Mr. Wilson, what about you? So on, down the line. After you get them talking about it, then you come back and talk to them then about why the law is what it is. And why, what did it, and then you come back to how many feel that way. You see. So then Ms. Jones has told you that she's bothered by it. When the judge said that, she's not sure she can do it. Okay, well, listen, I just want to see what your reaction to it is and whether you can follow it. And I've told you now why the law is what that is. Tell me what your thoughts are now. Don't tell her what her thoughts are. Don't tell her what she's got to do. Ask, indoctrinate, ask again is a basic, principle. And in the defense side, you're right. It's already going to be covered by the prosecutor. Now you want to sort through what the prosecutor's done. And some of your questions might depend upon what he or she has said during their deal. You might want to get rid of some of the things they said. Does that answer your question at all?
Yes.
Anybody else? Yes, sir. Are you afraid they're going to ask you, why did you ask another question?
No, sir.
All right.
So my question is this. You mentioned that you were going to commit to your office for about 3 years at the DA's office. And then you ended up being 15. What were you doing outside of the office to keep you fresh, to keep you motivated, to kind of go against the grain and do some things differently than everybody else? What were you doing outside the office? Because if you stay inside the office, man, I feel like you kind of do what everybody else does. So what were you doing?
It's an interesting question. My wife would say I had a period of time where I and 3 other prosecutors, one who later became a judge, spent too much time at a place called the Wooden Nickel where we would have drinks and try cases among ourselves after work. And then she pointed out to me after about 6 months of it, we had small children. You realize these guys you're having drinks with, they're all divorced? So I had to change that around a little bit. But it's a real interesting question. First of all, I didn't expect to like being a lawyer. I taught school. I'd been in the service 5 years back during Vietnam. I worked for a congressman a year. A lot of my peers out of undergraduate school had gone straight to law school. I didn't know one of them that were enjoying it. So I went to law school expecting not to like it. And my initial orientation was toward the defense. I was surprised at how much I enjoyed being a prosecutor. I remember philosophically being bothered about how many were minorities in chains and standing before the bench. And then as I got to cases and everything, I got more aware of just how many minorities were the victims. And so I enjoyed trying to run against the grain of what people expected a prosecutor to be. That's why I was talking about the dress and stuff like that. I wanted a jury to think that I did not go home at night thinking about putting people in the penitentiary. That what I was there to do. I was there as a prosecutor, and I still try to do the same thing as a defense attorney. I wanted them to go back there and call the close calls in my favor by saying, I don't think he lied. I don't think Rusty would ask us to do that. And so I always considered it a real high point if the jury was using my first name and if they were resolving close issues on my side. What does that have to do with what you asked? I loved what I was doing. All right? And I didn't expect to, because that wasn't the experience of my peers that had gone to college with me and been lawyers 10 years longer than me. I used to tell prosecutors, and I feel this way as a defense attorney, the way you know it's time to change jobs is when you either look forward to Friday or dread Monday. When either one of those things are happening, it's time to take that law degree and do something else, because there are a million things you could do with a law degree. So why do something you don't enjoy? I never hit that stage. I left for the other reasons I told you about. So I loved mixing with the defense bar. So I would socialize with them. I would kid with them. I enjoyed them. I enjoyed them as people. And so I didn't really look at them as the enemy. And I enjoyed trying to persuade people to my point of view. A jury trial, think about it, it's a magic experience, really, if you let it be. It's much harder on the defense side. It's harder on the defense side to avoid being cynical, because you see all kinds of things happen you didn't think should happen. And you've got a lot of people that don't appreciate what you do even after you represented them, even if you did a great job for them. So you lack that reinforcement a lot. Y'all particularly more than retained attorneys. But at the end of the day, I felt like I wanted to know something about every one of those people who sat there out there in the jury room. What do you do? What did your parents do? How'd you grow up? I mean, if the judge allows me that kind of time. I'm a big, as you can tell, touchy-feely person as far as what people are thinking, how they feel about it. I wanted people that felt good about the experience when I was a prosecutor and as a defendant, who walked out and felt like what they did was worthwhile. And I was one of three representatives of the system to them. The judge, they're going to like him or her pretty much no matter what they do, unless they're a roaring asshole, all right? The lawyers, they're going to be judging the lawyers based on how they behave themselves and how they conduct themselves. And as I said a million times, I think y'all's job is much harder. I mean, prosecutors put on the white hat for all the reasons that we've always heard and we know. Defense attorneys there to remind people as to how sacred the system and responding to accusations is. But I don't know that there was any secret to it. I think the first thing is you got to like people. If you don't like people, be a plumber. I mean, you can get in and out of the house, and everybody's going to bitch about your rates, but they're going to pay them because they needed you, and you don't have work to take home at night and all that jazz. But if you like people, it'll show through. I think the best compliment anybody can pay you as a trial lawyer is a juror thinking, I think he actually cared what I thought. I think he actually cared what my views were. And to do that, you got to care. And I tell people, juries are like children in the best sense of the word. They recognize when you're not being yourself. And I mean it that way. So I don't mean it demeaning. I don't mean they're children, they're not smart. I mean a child can sense when you're acting. And juries can too. So we have one son who was an actor. He's a school teacher now, but he started out from college. He went off to college to be an actor, and he was an actor in Chicago and stuff. And people hear about that, they would say, oh, so got that from his father, right? No. He got it from his mother, who had always a tremendous love of the theater. If he'd gotten it from me, I'd have had no success in my view. because I think the moment I start acting, the more they see through it. I think one of my favorite experiences with a jury was one time in an argument in a very serious case. And I noticed these two women on the front row, and I've always preferred women jurors. Okay, I plead guilty to that. I like women, and I would always have predominantly women jurors if I was left to my own devices. And there were these two women on the jury that they kept, during this really serious final argument, they kept nodding. And I couldn't figure out what was going on, because I was talking some serious stuff. And then in my mind, while I'm talking, I think, I went to the bathroom right before argument. So I was outside the podium, and I realized, damn, did I fail to zip up? So I slide over behind the post. Let's say I was over here. I slide before I reached down. My fly had been unopened the entire final argument. Now, there's just nothing to do about that, right? And so all I could write in the middle of this really serious, I just start laughing. And I can't think of anything. What would I do in ordinary life? Exactly what I did. I go, why didn't y'all tell me? And these two women said, we tried. So my point being is, that's the relationship you want. And I think you only get it if they think you're being yourself. They'll forgive a lot. I've slipped and fallen. You know, I mean, so what do you do with that? I mean, you've made a Columbo fool of yourself. All you can do is acknowledge it, all right? And other things that you do, I mean, they'll forgive. They're like children in this respect too. They'll forgive screw-ups if they think it's legitimate and it's who you really are. They'll punish you if they think you're acting. So that's a long way of not answering your question. I only want credit for knowing. I want you to know I realize I didn't answer your question. Because I don't know the answer. You know, in reality, I just loved it. Every part of it I loved. I mean, how long ago did we start this stuff?